the back, the VOD and the silver screen. Kevin and Tom and Joe know all there is to know, from masterpieces to deep fried tacos. And if the movie sucks, you might hear them say, there's no telling where the guys will take you. Get ready for a spoiler. Won't say it twice, cause we already warned you. Better watch out, it's gonna ruin the plot. Real spoilers. Real spoilers. Real spoilers.
Broadcasting from the lush but not lavish studios located in the basement of the O'Keefe Institute for Advanced Film Snarkitude, this is Real Spoilers, episode 812.
That's
Hey.
Transformers Yawn.
Oh, no. Well, we found the one critic that didn't like this movie. It only took 10 seconds.
So before we dig in, let's go on the table and everyone can introduce themselves.
This is Joe.
This is Kevin.
And this is Tom. And we also have a guest today. He was, you might remember him from our Furiosa episode, and he is a huge Transformers fan, which we're going to need. At least I'm going to need. It's Patrick Scott Patterson. Hey, Scott. How's
How
it
you
going?
doing? Thanks for having me out.
Hey, welcome.
On or whatever.
All of the above.
Or whatever. You know, we get a lot of
It's
that.
not like I win anywhere. I'm sitting in the living room.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, now I got to ask you a question, Scott. Last time you were here, you had a Drew Barrymore shirt on. I see you have another Drew Barrymore shirt. I see you have the wedding singer in the background. So I've got to ask, what is the deal with this?
I adore Drew Barrymore. That's about it. You know, I'm not just a big fan of Transformers. I'm a big fan of a few things, and she's one of them.
He's like, I am multifaceted.
Yeah.
So
That's pretty good.
I mean, on the ranking scale, though, if it was Transformers versus Drew, what do you think he'd come down to?
I don't know. I guess depends on the mood and the day. I don't know.
Well, that's cool. I know you do a lot of conventions and a lot of TV stuff. Have you ever actually had the chance to meet Drew?
One time I had a chance to meet her. I got into an advanced screening for Whip It in Dallas. And but when it came time to have the opportunity, I absolutely choked. I went catatonic. Yeah, I couldn't bring myself to do it. And really maybe twice. So the first time I'm just kind of sitting there, and you never know, like you can hear like your inner monologue talking, right? You know, but like you're not like registering the room. And that's just kind of what it was, where it's just, you know, you're just kind of sitting there, and my friend is smacking me in the leg like, dude, go say something, go say something. And then, you know, her time ran out, and she walked out of the room, and then I'm snapped into it, and I'm like, God, you know, so
It's a children's program.
but what's funny about it was I may have done it twice at the same event. It took me about 3 days to realize it, because on the way out of the screening, a person came up all official looking and serious. It was kind of almost weird. They were asking for people to go do this focus group where they talked about, you know, what they thought of the movie, right? Not quite like this one, I'm sure, but you know, and I was like, nah, I was kind of upset with myself, and I'm like, nah, I'm gonna just go on with my friends. And it dawned on me like 3 days later, she directed that movie. She was in that movie. She was there in person. She's probably in that focus group. She's probably watching that focus group. And I probably had a second chance and completely blew it because I was mad that I blew the first one.
That's
So,
tough.
That's a
yeah,
bummer.
but you know.
Well, hopefully someday. I mean, you know, there's still a lot of chances out there, so you'll get it someday, I hope.
Yeah, you know, and the thing is, something good actually did come out of it. I really didn't like how I felt doing that. You know, I was really upset with myself. So I swore to myself I was never going to allow myself to ever blow an opportunity again when I had a chance to meet somebody that I was a big fan of or admired in any way, shape, or form. I was never going to blow that opportunity again. And I haven't. You know, I've been fortunate in the years since, really 15 years since. Every time I've had an opportunity to meet somebody I was a big fan of or was inspired by in any way, shape, or form or whatever, I got that opportunity. I took the opportunity, and I feel like I'm better for it.
Oh, and I just realized as you said that, big light bulb went off. I saw a picture on Facebook of you and two of the famous Transformers stars, not necessarily this film, but the voices of Optimus Prime and Megatron. So you met Peter Cullen and Frank Welker, right?
Yeah, back in June, I got the opportunity to meet them and chat with them for a few minutes, and it was cool. Awesome. It was absolutely awesome. They're just complete sweethearts. They were, I told them it's been 40 years. I've been wanting to meet these guys for 40 years, and Frank particular was just kind of almost like, oh my gosh, he was happy for me, and they were just absolutely just so kind and humble, and it was a absolute pleasure. And that's an example of what I'm talking about. It's just they were going to be in town, and they're not young as springtime anymore. So who knows how many other opportunities there would be.
Didn't Cullen say he can't do the voice anymore? Isn't there something?
No, he still does.
Is that right?
I mean, he's still like when he's doing appearances, like when he was just at a con recently.
I thought I saw an interview where like his voice is just getting too
like
old.
Not like he's barred from doing it.
Yeah. Like it's hard for him to do the voice.
I think it's Welker actually. I think the Megatron
voice
maybe
that's
is really hard for him to do
okay.
now. I think the Megatron voice is too hard on him to do now.
Because that's really, hard on. Yeah.
It was hard on him back then.
Sure.
He'd have to lay the Megatron voice down last. From what I've read, because when they did the recording sessions, because he needed time to recover from it, and that was back in the 80s. So
yeah.
He's in his late 70s now, and Peter's 83. It's
that makes sense.
I can't do that voice for 5 seconds without
right.
I don't know how.
Yeah, because the last time I saw Peter Cullen, I'm pretty sure he said like he will do it for as long as he possibly can.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's so iconic, and we'll get into it, but it's so hard when you've grown up for 40 years, with these characters. That's just one of those things. But I mean, it's inevitable, right?
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen. We've seen it with Mario, yada yada yada. So anyway, well, I'm excited to talk to you about this movie. I know you've got a lot of love for the Transformers franchise, so it'll be good.
So before we start the movie proper, some shameless plugs. Don't forget we're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, TuneIn, wherever you find a podcast. You can find us. While you're there, be sure and follow us so you never miss an episode. Maybe leave us a review. That's super helpful. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Real Spoilers. While you're there, like the page, join the group. It's called the League of Show Sharers because we are hoping you will share an episode. People who were kind enough to share an episode last week include Jason McLean, Tom Dowdy, Ralph Tribble, Gabriel Lugo, Julianne Jordan, Richard Krotzer, Travis T. Witt, Tammy Lynn Powers Betts, Chris Magic Man, Chris Falls, Taylor Ward, Heather Sachs, Dissect That Film, Edit Photo Gamer, Spoiler Piece Theater, Binge Movies, Geek to Me Radio, Mike and Oscar, Colby Mack, Ronnie Castle, In Session Film, Matt Naglia, Nostalgia Cast, Ryan Terry, and Blake Fail. So thank you very much.
That's
sure.
a name I haven't heard in a long time.
They shared it a few weeks ago.
Very nice.
You can also check out our Patreon at patreon.com/Real Spoilers, where for $5 a month you get all sorts of bonus content. And coming up on one here soon, you'll actually have me.
That's right.
Isn't that exciting?
Yeah.
Is this my first one?
No, you've done one.
I think
I've done one other.
One other one.
One other.
Was there one about the
100
monkeys or something?
I don't remember what it was.
Something like that.
But we're attacking the Blues Brothers, which really turns into more just a conversation about SNL in general
That's what I hear.
and its history.
Yeah.
So, but and then of course, don't forget you can watch all of these episodes on the YouTube. So
I think we were like 45 minutes in. We're like, we should probably talk about this movie.
and then they crashed a bunch of cars and won the day. The
anyway,
end.
back to the
Now
cast.
wait a minute. That sounds exactly like an episode of Real Spoilers.
No, this
What's
is-
the difference?
This gets a little bit deeper.
This is pretty next
because I
level.
felt like it was with Patreon. It was like we're just gonna go. Like
Yeah.
I'm not gonna cut this. We're just gonna talk about.
Oh yeah, you get
and Matt-
minor edits on Patreon.
Yeah.
I'm not editing.
Well,
those
also I
things.
didn't realize that Matt is kind of also a massive SNL fan.
Oh yeah.
And he also like once those two started going, I was like, I'm just listening.
Oh, Joe was just the referee.
I was fine with it. Like it was fun to listen
We
to.
were just going down the rabbit hole of the history of SNL.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's all that. Let's dig in.
I will say,
Yeah.
I kind of agree to a degree once I realized, but I got into this movie once I figured out what this was, because the version of Transformers that we've had since 2007
yeah.
is a very like Michael Bay smash,
Right.
not
Yeah.
a lot of humor, but like taking everything kind of seriously.
This blows everything live action out of the water.
I need to go back and rewatch
Oh,
Bumblebee. but I feel like
Bumblebee's good, but I know you're not a fan of Transformers.
So
Let's
look,
get this out of the way.
Transformers came out when I was like 15.
Yeah, okay.
So like I don't have childhood nostalgia for Transformers.
Sure.
And so I never I remember when I was in high school, one of my friends was like really into Transformers, and we may watch that cartoon movie, and I was just like, dude, this is bad. Like, I know you love it, but this is not good.
There's a rated R version of that.
Yeah.
But so that's the thing. I mean, if you don't have any nostalgia for Transformers and you don't like Transformers, and I think there's some very good Transformers stuff, you're not going to necessarily care as much about the lore and everything. But this movie, and Scott, I'm going to ask you because I think you'll agree, this movie gets into the lore of Transformers. This is the most accurate to the original movie, the G1 series, the comic books. Like, this does Transformers
I always think it's
justice.
funny when people were like, if this honors the source material, and I'm like, the source material is a commercial, right?
but they've built this, but they have built this rich lore, and there were 4 seasons of the TV series, and so and plus the movie, and then plus all the other series, and yada yada. So Scott, tell us a little bit about your background with Transformers, and how did this movie land for you?
Prequels are hard for anything, because you already know kind of where the story is going to end up from where you started. And so that's always a concern for me, especially when it's something I'm a fan of, because I'm already going to know it. The original cartoon, some of this lore in this movie started with an episode of the original cartoon called War Dawn, which aired later in season 2. That's where you meet Orion Pax and things like that. And it's not an exact lift of that story. In the original cartoon episode, Megatron already exists. He's already starting the war, that sort of thing. He whoops up on Orion Pax and his friends, and, he gets rebuilt as Optimus Prime, and, the Autobots start to rise up. So it's not quite like that. My initial concern about this film, it started with the first trailer, which, I haven't watched a lot of the later trailers, but the first trailer was cut. I guess an example of how you can cut a trailer bad. It looked a little too maybe kiddified.
That's what I thought. I totally agree with you.
Like total kids movie.
Yes.
Yeah. And I had the same concern during the previews for this movie, because they were showing a lot of kids stuff.
Yes.
Family friendly movies. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, I'm trying to have an open mind with it, because Transformers, they're selling Transformers toys for kids right now. So, I can understand what their target audience is. But once it got going, it got a little, more intense and a lot darker at times than I thought that it was going to, especially for an animated movie that is based on a toy line. And I, in my opinion, I think they struck a good balance between, giving us old schoolers, because I was 9 when the Transformers first came out, so I was really into it back then. And and
that's the perfect
age.
age.
Baby when it came out.
Yeah.
We watched it later.
Well, I think I was on the second round.
Yeah.
Like that second round of Transformers, because it was Transformers, He-Man, G.I. Joe, and for me, wrestlers and superheroes. Like that's
because they replayed a lot of that stuff, right? Like
well,
I caught it later too. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we grew up in kind of a golden age of action figures.
Absolutely.
And cartoons made to sell us action figures. And some of them were really good, and some of them were not so good. And I think the original Transformers cartoon, for being a toy commercial, they went and got writers from Marvel Comics to flesh out these characters. They got the best voice actors you could get on the market in that time. They really spent, some time trying to make it good for a toy commercial, as opposed to a lot of those other cartoons like Mask? That was a cool toy line, but that cartoon was terrible.
Yeah,
Silverhawks.
And there's nostalgia. I mean, people are going to love, you played with the toys, you watch the show, even if it's bad, you're going to have some nostalgia. But this Transformers show was the top tier of those. I mean, for what they are, Transformers had
the original
the writing, the G1 we grew up with. It had the writing, it had the animation, the voice acting.
This is G.I. Joe.
Yeah, this is G.I. Joe.
I wanted to touch on that, there has been, Image Comics has...
There Hasbro been.
I see what you did there. Robert Kirkman, who is now kind of in charge of Image Comics, which is wild to think about, signed a deal, and he brought G.I. Joe and Transformers back to Image. So not only are they they're still publishing the original G.I. Joe run. Like they're back to the original numbering from the Marvel.
Oh,
IDW.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's
it's
funny.
Larry Hama is still writing it. Like
Oh,
it's
wow.
kind of wild. But he is doing what was called like the Energon universe. So they started with these one shots or miniseries. So there was a Duke miniseries, there's a Scarlett miniseries, Destro, Cobra Commander. But then there's also this other Transformers comic, and now like they're bringing it all together
And in
like,
the movie universe,
That's
remember
what
the
I'm
end
saying.
remember the end
Yes.
of the new movie that the Rise of the Beast?
Yes.
So like it's all tying in. It's all about synergy. Everyone wants their own Marvel thing. So we'll see whether or not it works. But you did notice that logo from the beginning of the movie, Hasbro Entertainment.
Yeah,
I
which
mean
I
they've
thot
got
was-
everything from Peppa Pig.
Yeah, I didn't
to
know. I didn't
Monopoly
Mono-
Man.
Yeah, the
know. I
Monopoly
didn't know
guy.
Hasbro had Peppa Pig.
I didn't either, but I guess
Oh.
they make the toys for
Wow,
it.
yeah.
So they've got that. I think there is a Monopoly movie that was announced like a year ago. Remember, Hasbro said we're making, because Mattel's doing it too. All these toy companies are making their own movies, and based on especially some of the success, I think they're rushing out to get a whole bunch of them. So
Sure.
we'll see whether or not they're good. But anyway, the thing I really appreciated about this movie is how true they stay to the source material. Whatever you think of it, I mean, that's whatever. But for fans of the series, there's so much in here that you can appreciate. But then also for newcomers, I mean, this is an origin story.
This is
You
very
can,
much an origin.
you can get thrown right into this.
And I think that was my thing. I was like, man, this felt the beginning. I would say the first 30 minutes of this, I was like, this feels weird. Like it feels very much like a kid's Saturday morning cartoon, but then it starts to drift and
Yeah.
it starts to kind. I was like,
Oh, drift.
see?
It's
race.
accelerating
That's right.
quick.
Yeah.
Accelerated quick. Yeah.
Man, the pacing on this, I thought was boom. It's a brisk 140.
Yep.
The pacing picks up. There's a lot of action. It goes. Once they get to that race,
Oh,
it
yeah.
doesn't ever stop.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some fun interactions and stuff. The mine escape where Jazz gets hurt and stuff, which I'm sure we'll touch on. But once they get to that race and they get thrown into,
Yeah. Once they go to the top of
which that
Cybertron.
race is straight out of the comic books, I
Yes.
believe. So, I mean, everything. There is so much little stuff. And also, Scott, and you can probably get into more detail than me, but if I remember correctly, the cartoon series has kind of the origin of who created the Transformers, and it has stuff about the Autobots and the Decepticons, and there were worker bots and the transforming ones. So like the stuff about being without a cog and not being able to transform,
Right.
and some of them are these big transformers, like that stuff was in the G1 series, right?
Yeah, I mean, not is like a direct port, but
Not
a lot of this
directly,
stuff, but a lot of this stuff, like the idea of a transformation cog, was in the original series starting in season 3 because they had to get one down to Autobot City because he couldn't transform anymore. Because in the '86 Transformers movie, he got absolutely pounded and destroyed. And so it damaged, the idea of a transformation cog, the idea of the matrix of leadership, which I'm glad they called it that. They didn't call it the
Spark.
Spark or anything.
I mean, that's straight out of
they went
Transformers the movie.
Yes.
Right, they went old school with it, and
Yep.
it looked like it. And I mean, I think that's where they did a good balance. Obviously, they've retconned a little bit of this or evolved a little bit of this over time, especially when it comes down to the character who became Megatron. But a lot of this stuff, it had its origins in the original series that ran from 1984 to 1987, and for a gray and beard kind of guy like me, that was fun to see. It was a pleasant surprise because I thought that they would go a little more modern take with it than they did.
Yeah.
That is an interesting call. I do feel like when there's multiple iterations of a property, when they do another like quote unquote reboot, they don't ever really go back to the original. Like
Right.
they tend to go back to like the second generation or
Unless
whatever.
they're trying to do it right. I mean, that's the thing is that.
But how often does that happen?
Right, I know,
Yeah.
but like with the Michael Bay stuff, I mean, Michael Bay took that and he goes transforming cars. Okay, a guy named Optimus, let's go. You know what I mean? Like,
There's not a lot of
he didn't really. Don't write in or comment on YouTube, please. Feel free to correct me. But I know there's other little things. as the
Those movies
progress.
are hit or
but
miss.
For the most
Some of them
part,
really
But
suck.
for the most part, he's not really looking deep to the
No.
lore. He's like, these cars transform. Here's their names. This one's yellow. Like, what I mean? Like,
Right.
we'll call him Bumblebee and let's go. I mean,
we're
that
gonna
whole thing.
put we're gonna put Megan Fox, awkwardly over the hood of a car.
I mean, like the whole thing with Bumblebee not talking, it's like Bumblebee always talked in the cartoons. That's just a Michael Bay random.
Can I tell you that for the
thing.
longest time, I always confused Bumblebee and Hot Rod?
Okay.
Like I know
What?
they're separate cars, but like
One's a yellow Beetle and,
and
one's
well,
a red
it was just one of the
sports car.
like when I always thought like Hot Rod was the cooler of the cars.
He is.
He is, but then they were like focusing on Bumblebee in these movies, and they were like, but they were making Bumblebee the cool cars, and I was like, did I get that wrong the whole time?
They're all cool, Joe.
Yeah,
That's
well, all
your mistake. So anyway, I do think, like Scott said, it's a really hard line to balance. Like it's a tightrope act because we
Can
saw
be.
this with the Mario movie, right? Mario movie made a ton of money, but that was a little kids movie.
Oh, 100%.
A little kids movie, and that's what this looked like it might have been. But it gets dark.
That's
There's
how it
lots
starts.
Of action.
I 100% think.
Yeah, with
like,
the jokes and stuff, it felt like a
You
little.
got a Toy Story guy in charge.
That's
Well,
exactly it.
This is
No.
the writer-director of Toy Story 4, which I think
Yeah.
is my favorite Toy Story movie.
Really?
I love Toy Story 4. They're all great. They're all masterpieces. Like we're splitting hairs here.
Yeah,
I
right,
love
right.
Toy Story 4. A lot of people didn't like it. I think just they called it unnecessary. And
Oh, that's the
and-
one where they're finding Bo Peep.
Yeah, I mean it's just because
right?
3 had the perfect ending. So you make a
Yeah.
sequel and everyone's gonna say
They're like at the traveling carnival.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
yeah,
one
that's right,
Buzz-
that's
Key
right.
and
what Buzz
Peele
is
are
at
in
the-
it. And
yeah.
it's really funny. Tony Hale is Forky.
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 Yeah.
It's hilarious. I love it. I think maybe 3 is the best. 4 I think is the most entertaining. But anyway, it's the writer director of that.
Yeah.
Like this is a Pixar guy. He had a huge success with Toy Story 4. They bring him in for this movie, and clearly the creatives, the writers, the directors, the animators, they are the love for this series, the love for Transformers shows, and all of these homages, and they're not necessarily hit you over the head because, like Tom, you're not a Transformers fan, but
No.
I mean, they don't necessarily wink into the camera or whatever. It's like they have names for stuff, and if
Yeah,
you know it, you know
I think
it,
what was
you know?
interesting is the GoBots joke. Well, that was kind of funny.
Hasbro owns
Yeah.
GoBots now.
Yeah, I got a
Oh,
good look.
okay.
So
that makes
GoBots are
sense.
before Transformers.
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
Transformers were way cooler.
Of course
and
they
then
were.
in the 90s, Hasbro bought GoBots.
Okay.
So I like it that they call them, you put like the lowly GoBots,
Yeah.
like it's a derogatory term.
because it is.
Right. It was always like, yeah, you're playing with GoBots, right? That's
But I
kind of
did,
the-
you get cameos from Starscream and
Steve Buscemi.
Steve Buscemi as the
Steve
voice.
Buscemi.
Yeah.
I thought
That's
that was
awesome.
good.
Yeah.
That's a good choice.
Well, and I like
And
that
the
they
voice
they
modulator.
messed his voice up.
See, that's a joke because in the show, Starscream has a really raspy high voice.
Okay.
So when Steve Buscemi gets his throat hurt and he's talking with that like warbly, like whatever, it's like an homage
Oh,
to the
yeah,
cartoon.
yeah, yeah.
So there's stuff like that.
I think
to
the
where-
voice of Starscream is the voice of Cobra Commander.
Yeah,
Oh,
it was
really?
Chris Latta.
Yeah.
The late Chris Latta.
Okay.
He did Christopher Collins when he did live stuff. He was in Roadhouse and stuff like that.
Oh, really?
Married with Children. Yeah. Yeah, he was he did live acting under the name Christopher Collins and did voice work under Chris
Oh,
Latta.
that's funny.
And,
But yeah, you
so,
see
yeah, he did a
all
lot.
you see Soundwave, and you see. I do like the joke where he's like, "Is there any other waves
Wave,
here?"
yeah.
Like, there's a lot
Yeah.
of. Waves.
Well, they've got Soundwave and what's the other
Shockwave.
guy? Shockwave. Yeah,
Shockwave,
Shockwave.
yeah.
So that was a good joke. I mean, you see a lot. If you look in the background, there's a lot.
There's a lot.
There's a lot of them, even in the Iacon city that are just in the background, kind
Yep.
of. I mean, they save Jazz. Jazz is one of the main characters. He's the
Jazz.
white and black car from the series. Like,
Yep.
but he's a minor one in this. You don't really follow him, but it's like if you hear him say, "Hey, Jazz," or we.
Well, he
rescued-
said it when they were pulling him out of the rubble. They called
Yeah,
him Jazz.
right?
It's
And
like,
so-
well, all right.
And then the pink one. What's the pink Transformers name?
You had RC. You
RC,
had
yep.
you had Wheeljack back there, Ironhide, Red Alert. There was an awful lot. I hope I didn't start mentioning
we
them. I
see
watched it with
RC?
my son. Yeah, RC made a cameo 2 or 3 different times.
Yeah,
Okay.
the pink one.
Okay. Well, I think when you say the pink one, I think of Scarlett Johansson.
No, well, the main one, Alita, is pink in this, but the one, they're smaller. So to get into the movie, so there's the 2 type of robots. You've got the Transformers, and then you have basically the miners, the waste disposal. They're on Cybertron. They're in a city called. Is it called Iacon City? Is that
Yeah.
okay? And so in this city, you've got all these workers, and the primes basically have all gone. There used to be a whole bunch of primes that ruled the city and protected everyone. Come to find out that they went out on to the surface and they had this battle, and all of them were killed except for Sentinel Prime.
Is that John Hamm?
Who's played by John
Okay.
Hamm. So now he's kind of the king of the city, and they are looking for the matrix of leadership. So if you've seen the 80s movie, that's the thing that Optimus Prime has. He has it in his chest. When he dies, Hot Rod takes it.
Spoilers!
Well, we're going to spoil the TV show in the 86 movie. That's just a given. Because we're going to talk about, how
40
they're
years.
similar.
I gotta tell you, man. when he dies in that movie, you're like,
kids.
what?
That was
he
the beginning
dies
of
in
the
that
end.
movie
That
like
was-
real early,
that
and
was
you're
the-
like, oh, yeah.
They did it to sell more toys, and that was the beginning of the end because like Optimus Prime is the coolest character. I cannot believe they did that. But anyway, Hot Rod takes the Matrix of leadership and becomes Rodimus Prime. So they've taken on that same kind of lore, and there's been other things, but they're the Primes are like the main rulers.
They really like they strip this down. And when I say this movie is for kids, it is for a lot of it. So they strip the lore down kind of bare bones where it's easier to understand.
So not Prime. Orion Pax goes to the archives. Orion Pax played by Chris Hemsworth, so he's going to be the new Prime voice. And he goes to the archives to like you're not really supposed to be in there, but he sneaks in there. And then Laurence Fishburne gives the exposition drop of Orion Pax learning. And when he listens to this little hologram play out about the history of everything, it stops. It cuts off. It always cuts off at the same part.
They keep saying that the matrix of leadership has disappeared. But nobody knows where.
Right.
And before they find out where the thing always cuts off.
Right. So you know, and as adults watching the movie, you go, okay, something's up.
Right.
Like obviously something is going to go on here. So anyway, so he goes back. He's a minor, and so you've got him. You meet D16, who spoilers. You can look at him. Obviously, that's going to be Megatron. This is an origin
The helmet
story.
kind of gives it away.
I think we can pretty much just call him Prime and Megatron. But anyway, so he goes back. He and D16, they work for Alita 1, who is played by Scarlett Johansson, and they're mining for like ore
Energon.
because Energon's gone.
Yeah.
When the Matrix of leadership is gone.
No, they're mining for Energon.
No, Energon was flowing, and they are mining for the remnants of the last remnants of Energon.
Okay.
Energon flowed through the city, and when the Matrix of leadership disappeared, the Energon dried up.
Right.
So now all that's left is what has sunken into the whatever. So they're mining for this little ore that has the remnants, and they're going to take that, and that's what they process. But they're struggling because there's not enough Energon to keep the place going forever, and they're going to run out eventually.
Which is kind of the premise of the show.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So they're always trying to find Energon. Well, because Cybertron's destroyed, and so like
is this the first time we've seen Cybertron not destroyed? Have we ever seen it?
Are there flashbacks to it, Scott? I'm pretty sure we've seen it.
In the original series, like I said, the episode where this lore that was in this movie mostly started, they go back in time. You see the golden age of Cybertron, where they had an Earth-like atmosphere and everything was clean and complete, and they had plenty of energy. But for the most part, no, you don't really get to see that except just bits here and there. In the original series, Cybertron has just pretty much been obliterated. Neither side has the energy they really need to try to win the war anymore. They're really down to scraps.
It's Krypton. Cybertron is
Yeah,
Krypton.
yeah,
you
yeah.
don't
Well,
really ever. It's a destroyed planet, their home planet where they come from. We talked about the mining accident. So while they're in there, there's an explosion that happens. Jazz ends up under the rubble, and then they have to rescue him and pull him out of there.
Literally pull his leg off.
Yeah, and in that they broke protocol because if the thing's gonna collapse, they're supposed to get out of there.
He's a bad boy. He doesn't play by the rules.
Yeah, and so but we see here though. this is where we're starting.
Rebel
to
with
see,
a heart of gold.
Yes.
Yeah, but this is where we're starting to see the divergence of paths.
He's a transformer, which makes him a rebel with a car.
That's true. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. That's well done.
So Orion Pax does have the heart of gold, though, right? He's there to help people, to protect them. He's not selfish. He's doing things for other. D16 seems like a pretty decent guy, but you just start to see he's not really about breaking the rules. He doesn't really care as much, and he's quick to anger sometimes. Like we see these little cracks starting to show. But anyway, they get him out of there. They fire Alita, not the Battle Angel. I would like to see a sequel to that
it is
movie.
kind of funny that every time they said it, and I was like, man, can't stop thinking about that
Spelled
movie.
differently, but it sounds the
Yeah,
same.
right,
I know.
right.
That was a fun movie.
That was a Robert
should have
Rodriguez movie.
It is, yeah. But this is when they go to the race. So there's this race called the Iacon 5000. It's from the comic book. So again, it's another deep cut. The city does this like every year or whatever, every whatever cycles, so that just to celebrate and to rally people, just to raise morale of the miners in the
Bread
city.
and circuses.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
So all the transformers that can be planes, cars, tanks, whatever they are, all the
Trains, automobiles, all of them.
yeah, exactly. Planes, trains, automobiles, any of them. They all race in this and
Toaster ovens.
with wheels.
Yeah.
On wheels.
They didn't do too good.
And so, and I thought this was really funny. Like once this happened, I wasn't sure where the tone or the humor
I
was.
gotta tell you, this felt very Wreck-It Ralph to me.
Yeah, this was
Like
No,
I
I
got
agree
big
with
Wreck-It
that.
Ralph vibes from this.
I thought this scene was really, really fun, but I wasn't sure of the humor. The movie did feel a little kiddie at first. I mean, I wasn't opposed to it. I'm like, this is a kid's movie, but I was like, where are we going?
Well, I think that was my disconnect, right? Is I think I hit, I've been watching Transformers movies, or
Yeah.
cartoons, whatever.
Forever.
And the cartoons, the original cartoons, did have like an aura of seriousness to
They
it.
are serious,
right? And then the Michael Bay stuff also.
Well,
like,
Beast
took
Wars. When you
things-
get to Beast Wars,
Oh,
it gets a
man,
little goofy.
I love me some Beast Wars.
That's a goofy one, though,
Oh,
right?
yes.
The rat and everything.
Yes.
They're goofy.
Yeah. So about 30 minutes into this, I was like, man, they are really leaning into the kid.
Yeah.
And I wasn't connecting with it at all. And then this race happens.
And I don't know that it's even 30 minutes in. It may have felt like it, but
It may have felt like
it might have been 20 minutes or something. But they get into the race, and then once they get to the race, so you find out Orion Pax, it seems like, he did a nice thing. He snuck him and D16 through the back passageways, and they've got this front row view. They're right
Right.
behind the starting line or the finish line for the race, and they're going to watch it. He's like, this was so nice of you to bring us. And then all of a sudden, they're in the race. It drops them. They say go. They get dropped into the race. And I thought this was so funny because they're like, it looks like a couple of minors are on the field. And then you go to the scoreboard and it goes minors. That's a funny beat. That's a really
like I said,
funny.
It's very Wreck-It Ralph.
It's just hilarious. And then so you get this huge action-packed race scene where the track, and you see this throughout the whole city from the very beginning. They're delivering energon on trains.
Yeah.
And the ground. I mean, because this is a very advanced society. This whole planet is technology, right? The people, it's machines that run the place. And so you've got these tracks that run along. So this race, it's like the track is building itself. Obstacles are being built in the path as they go along. And so it's a really visually interesting. It reminded me of not the same animation style, but like Spider-Verse, that exciting action scene.
I did want to touch on that it's interesting to see, Disney and Pixar kind of dominated animated movies. I mean, forever.
Yeah.
Honestly, DreamWorks would, Ice Age would come out, but it wasn't even close to.
Yeah, but DreamWorks was the first big competition.
It
right?
was,
That's
but
Spielberg.
when you look at what DreamWorks was putting out compared to what Disney and Pixar were putting out, Disney and Pixar were
in the beginning.
Yes,
but How to Train Your Dragon is a phenomenal looking
and I will
piece
say
of animation.
I appreciate now that we've got DreamWorks is coming out with this new robot flick.
Yeah, looks phenomenal. Wild Robot.
I don't know if we're going to see a Spider-Verse movie anytime soon.
Oh, we will.
I know we will.
That guy's off Twitter now, so
is he really?
See how you feel about those rumors now.
So and then you've got this and that. So I appreciate that there
so
is
this is Paramount, and
Yes.
Paramount does pretty big animated productions with SpongeBob movies. You know what I mean? There's some they make.
And then you've got
films.
Illumination as well. So you've got all of these different companies that finally are starting to look different.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody was copying the Pixar Disney model for a long time, but then I feel like Spider-Verse came out and looked like nothing else. This, I mean,
I do appreciate it. This looks different.
it
You're
looks
getting
different.
New Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Also.
Oh yeah, that was
Yeah.
great.
I don't know if you know this or not, but that story actually broke on the clip out.
What story?
That they signed up to do that they officially.
How did that happen?
Because we were interviewing the lady that works for the animation company, and she was like, I don't know if I can say this. We're real close to signing it. And then while we were talking to her, she's like, oh, I just got the email. Yeah, I'm cool. We're doing it.
So was that the TV show that's on now? Or
No,
the
movie this with Seth Rogen.
Yeah.
and
That
all.
movie
Yeah.
was great.
That movie
Yeah.
was phenomenal, right?
Yeah.
And that had a Spider-Verse feel.
It did.
We talked about it. Spider-Verse, when that hit and became such just a mega blockbuster, that we were like, we're going to see more movies that look like
Sorry,
it.
it didn't Wish kind of have that look too? I feel like Wish kind of had
did
that
not-
scratchy.
Wish did something, we'll say similar, but not quite the same.
Okay,
I
okay.
did not like Wish.
I don't think anybody did.
Well, I don't think a lot of people liked it for the story, and the songs
It was
were
just
bad.
boring.
It
Yeah.
is. It was bad. I mean, Disney movies are about songs. All the songs were bad. They were terrible. I couldn't tell you one except for the one called Wish, because I mean, but anyway, but Turtles still did its own thing. Like it was Spider-Verse-y, but it was also like
I don't think it
script-
would exist without Spider-Verse.
Yes,
but
the
it's not a
influence-
clone of Spider-Verse. It was
Thank
like,
you,
oh, we
yes.
can do different things because it's got more of like a
Comic book look.
graffiti
Scratch-
street
yes,
art
yes.
kind of vibe to
yeah,
it.
Yeah, yeah,
So, but the stop motion, the low frame rate is a Spider-Verse thing, right?
100%.
And so it used to be low frame rate was to save money, and you would get the choppy like anime type animation,
Yeah.
right? I mean, even with stuff like Transformers or what, like they saved money by doing a lower frame rate. But now Spider-Verse has taken it and owned the low frame rate
yeah.
and turned it into a style, which is really cool. It's for them to embrace it.
So on the game, you can
Yeah, you can do Spider-Verse mode. As
yeah,
a
it's kind of cool.
secret-
You can on the second one, if you select the Spider-Verse skins,
Yeah.
it changes the frame rate in the
Yeah.
game to look like Spider-Verse.
That's really
I
cool.
don't like it.
Oh, it's cool though. It's a cool
Messes
feature.
me
but- So anyway, so they get in the race, and it's just really fun to see them go through these obstacles, and they are beating all these Transformers, and they have no power.
Well, they say like, if look, we don't have to come in first. Like we just can't come in last, and we can show that we're better than we're on the level of the other Transformers.
Right, and just the fact that they made it so far, so they end up getting to like what would have been winning the race, but they end up tripping, and then
Well, Megatron like gets his legs taken out.
Yeah,
Not
he
taken
gets
out, but he gets hurt.
knocked
and-
over, trips, whatever. But then this again shows you, like Orion Pax, he says, go finish the race. You're right there. You're going to get first place. And he says, no, I'm staying with you. We're doing this together. So he holds him,
Right.
and they basically limp towards the finish line. And another guy blows past him, first place, and like, oh, well, at least we're not last. And then all of a sudden, vroom, vroom,
Yeah,
vroom. Again, the
right.
humor, very funny, but
Yeah.
everyone's blowing past them. But the fact is, they put on a show. Like, that's
Yeah.
the thing, is that two miners with no transformation cogs, they were smart about it. They used the other Transformers like skateboards, like Marty McFly. They hung from them. They used their heads and were tricky about it. The Chekhov's cannon thing,
Right.
Oh, you could be blown across the, obviously we know, so that they're going to
We'll
use
see
that
that later.
So anyway, though, they get the attention of the big guy, Sentinel Prime, and they at first think they're like, well, we're dead, or like we're in trouble, right?
Yeah, because they're in like a
med-
med bay.
Med bay, yeah.
Yeah.
And Orion Prime, they're like, or Sentinel Prime, they're like, oh, we're sorry, whatever. And he's like, what? Are you kidding me? And this, I like this humor too, is really like awkward.
He's
where-
the most John Hamm is really good at this.
Smarmy.
Yes. He's the most disingenuous. You're like, oh, this is the most. This guy's a bad guy. Like he's absolutely the bad guy.
You obviously
Yeah,
know.
he's very Homelander.
Yes, very Homelander.
was.
Yeah.
As soon as he's talking to the people, where he's like, I'm back from my mission, and oh, sorry, we didn't get the thing, but just keep mining and keep obviously something's up with that. So anyway, his bad guy is there, which is like a spider bot. I don't
It's like
catch her name.
Dark Wave or something.
No,
that-
Darkwing is, which I was thinking Darkwing Duck, but Darkwing is that big robot that wants to.
Darkwing was a Marvel character that everybody thought was going to be the next big thing, and then
Yeah.
wasn't.
Oh.
He had man. I remember that number. There was like a Chrome cover to #1, and then that book blew up. And then I think somebody said that he was going to be in Guardians 3. Like he was going to show up in that, and then that #1 like exploded again, and I was like, "You idiots! Like I've been down this road before. Nobody's gonna buy a Dark. Maybe it was Dark Hawk.
Oh yeah, I didn't remember.
Yeah.
Darkwing Duck's the only one. I know.
Darkwing Duck is Dark Hawk.
Is Darkwing
Well,
a character from the series, Scott?
Yeah, he came after the original cartoon. I think the
Oh.
toy for that came out in 87, 88.
Okay.
So, after the cartoon had been discontinued, but they were still making the toys for several years.
Okay.
That was a character. That
Okay,
was a
so-
pretty cool toy at the time.
Yeah, so there's deep cuts. There's even for people who watch the cartoons. Like
Oh, yeah.
I don't remember Darkwing, but yeah, there's so many toy lines that came out. But anyway, so there's a bad guy. I don't remember her name, but there's like this spider bot that has all these eyes and is basically sees everything because of all the eyes, which
Yeah.
is going to come back later. But anyway, so Sentinel basically says, hey, like take them to our best spa or whatever, get them repaired and fixed up, whatever they need. And then Darkwing comes, and they messed with Darkwing during the race, and so Darkwing is like, yeah, no one's ever going to see you again.
Yeah.
Dumps them in the trash compactor, basically, where all the scrap goes. And that's where they meet B-127, who is Bumblebee. Now, this was really funny. I thought he was going to be like this evil robot. He's got the one eye, one red eye.
Yeah.
Come to find out that's a welding mask, and he flips it up, and it's like, oh, hey, guys, what's up? And
It's very and it's Keegan-Michael Key.
Keegan-Michael Key. And
Yeah.
then the AA-tron joke, I
Yeah.
thought was great.
I thought that was a good joke.
I didn't know who the voice was at first, and then he said, "Here, come meet my friends," whatever. And AA-tron and Steve, another just random funny joke, which is a callback to the series, funny enough. But
The Steve joke?
yeah, because there was a robot that like lost his memory and couldn't remember his name, so they called him Steve.
Good Lord.
Do you remember that, Scott?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a super deep cut.
That was pretty good.
But anyway, so very, very funny. But when he said Aatron, I'm like, oh, that's Keegan-Michael Key.
Yeah. And I will say the voice cast is really good. I think everybody does.
Yeah.
They're doing a voice. It's not just stunt casting, I think. Like I feel like
I think it's stunt casting, but I think they're
Well,
doing a good job.
But but what I mean is that there's empty stunt casting, and then there's casting names.
You mean
but
like
they're
Chris Pratt as Mario?
right because he's just talking.
Yeah.
I
Right.
think people, even Chris Hemsworth, is putting on a voice.
Oh, sure.
You know what I mean? Like
sure.
he's kind of dropping the accent.
I gotta
he's
tell
got a
you,
deeper voice.
When we get to the end, go ahead, Scott. I'm sorry.
Oh, he actually, I read, he actually consulted with Peter Cullen to try to come up with what a young Optimus Prime or Orion Pax voice should sound like, rather than just going there and just collecting his check and talking as himself.
That's kind of like when it gets to the. It's not really a spoiler, but like when it gets to the end,
there's an evolution.
I thought.
I thought they were gonna do
like
it.
when he's giving the speech at the end, there's
That
a
it would-
moment where the voice
I
kind
know.
of like.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, that'd be kind of wild if they just kind of melded the two together and then.
And I don't think they did. And I wish what they're going to do is I think they're going to try to make this into a trilogy.
Yeah.
If this does well, and hopefully it does. But I think they're going to try to keep that. And then the voice cast will be the same. I think introducing Peter Cullen would then add uncertainty. And then, who knows if he'll be able to do 2, 3, whatever movies, a TV show, down the road.
Yeah, like, I mean, not to be morbid, but at that age, I don't know that
It's just hard to.
Right, he's 83. He's
Yeah.
83 years old, and while he's young and he's spry and he's energetic, he's 83
He's
years
83,
old.
yeah.
Right.
It's just
like-
hard to bank on health. I mean, anything, right? The voice could go out. Not saying he won't be around, but his voice could not be, could just stop working, or he can't do certain registers.
I do think that Optimus voice probably isn't, he's not putting as much pressure as Frank Welker was.
His voice is very similar to Optimus. He's doing a lower register. He based on his brother, right? I've heard him talk before. So his brother, who I guess sounds a lot like him, but has a deeper voice. And so basically what he's doing is an impression of his brother.
Okay.
Which is kind of cool.
It was his brother with a little bit of John Wayne thrown in,
Yep.
is what he did.
That's
for
right. I
could see
Optimus
that.
Prime.
Yeah, the slow, like the,
Yeah.
until all
man.
are one. The way he
That's-
like does
his
that
voice
slow.
is so good.
It is so iconic, and that's the thing. Like I want to touch on. I think it works here with Hemsworth because it's an origin, right? This is not Optimus Prime the movie. This is Orion Pax the movie and the origin story. I badmouthed Robin Hood the other day with Russell Crowe because he's not Robin Hood. I mean, I think there's enough Prime stuff in this movie.
He
where it's still
looks
fun.
like Optimus Prime.
But
so
yeah,
it's
you've
like,
still got enough Prime to where like you can see it. But he's
Well, and
younger.
they're still doing Transformers.
That's the
Right,
that's what I'm saying.
Right, when they did that with Robin Hood,
There was
it was
no Robin
there's
Hood
no
stuff.
Robin Hood. So it's like,
That's
so
what I mean,
You're
yeah.
still getting the sort of action that you want
Yes.
in this movie.
It's
like,
different.
even though it doesn't work
doesn't
for
he
me,
not
like,
have a bow
I
and
can
arrow
acknowledge that.
until like the last 5
Some-
minutes
No,
of
they
the movie.
handed it to him at the end, and he's
Yeah.
like, "I'm Robin Hood."
They were
now."
like, "You were Robin Hood. Here's a bow and arrow." The
See,
end.
It literally.
Finn.
That is what they do, and it's so frustrating because that movie is so slow and boring. And
Yeah.
they're like, "Where's the Robin
And
Hood?"
then the next movie, he gets his hood.
yeah, right. Yeah, you're Robin, and then it starts with "Here's your hood." But anyway, exactly. So there's Transformers all over this movie, and action and transforming, and it's what you want, right? So anyway, where were we at? Okay, so they get to the trash compactor, meet B. It's really fun. They basically end up in the trash compactor. They find a little.
It was in Steve's head.
Like a hologram. Yeah, it was in Steve's
Yeah.
head because, like, oh, you killed Steve. Very funny. But anyway, a little thing bounces out or whatever, and Orion Pax picks it up, and then it's the rest of Laurence Fishburne's archive about what happened.
It's the location of the Matrix.
Yeah, and so we end up going to see, right? Don't they do? And they show that like all the primes.
So they
are
should
still there. Or?
Yeah, they show the fight with the primes and how all the primes are dead.
Or no, he
and-
shows that later. I'm sorry. It's the like treasure map. And then
you're
he
right.
turns on. I'm sorry, that was my bad. So they're basically like, well, this is how we're gonna get back, and if we bring the Matrix of leadership, we're gonna be good. And then they end up roping Alita into it,
Right.
And she's like, yeah, we're gonna go get this thing because I'm gonna get my promotion. They fired her when they screwed up.
Well,
The jazz
they knocked
rescue.
her down to like trash compactor, or
The
whatever.
waste disposal person, right? So anyway, they end up hitching a train of energon that's going to the surface, and this is when we start to see what's really going on, right? So like the surface is all crazy, and it's like rebuilding itself all funky, and it's dangerous. You see these little animals running around, and then all of a sudden a ship comes overhead. and big, huge warship, and it's scanning, and you see one of those little animals walk out, and as soon as it detects it, it's like a missile. Yeah, the place is blown up. And so anyway, they end up hiding. They find cover, narrowly escape, kind of a tense moment, and then they end up finding the last of the Primes, who is the Laurence Fishburne character.
Is this before or after they see the other guy kind of bend the knee to the bad aliens?
Before that's
Okay.
later.
Okay.
So they find which Prime is this? Do you guys remember which Prime?
I mean,
it
in
was?
my head, I think it's
Prime Rib.
Ooh.
Oh, Prime Rib.
That is tasty.
Yeah.
It is
so
tasty.
so they see, like, as they're trying to find the matrix of leadership, they see the Primes laid out. They see this whole battle. We see these Primes with a spear through their chest and their heads chopped off, and
Right.
and I think that's the one that D16's been like
No,
is a
no,
big fan of.
I don't think so.
The one with the head. I think he cut off his head. You
Oh,
saw it in the
maybe because you
flashback.
see
He
his
sliced
head.
it off.
You see
Yeah.
his head laying there. You're right. You're right. And that's Megatron.
Megatronus.
Megatronus.
Right?
Right?
Megatronus
Sorry.
Prime.
So D12
Yeah.
is a big fan of Megatronus, and
Right.
if you know obviously who he is, then blah blah blah. So he finds them all, and then the last one they see like a little light blinking, and so come to find out the Laurence Fishburne Prime is in like low power mode. He's not completely dead, but he's in power reserve. They give B has like some Energon cubes, puts it in his mouth. He wakes him up, and then he of course goes into fight mode.
I gotta tell you, this Transformer looked the best. Like the model of this Transformer,
He's
the
cool.
way he moved, like the cape in the background, I was like, "That's how you CGI a cape, Zack Snyder, you dumb."
Oh, geez.
Yeah,
Had
I
to
did
get
it.
it.
I did it.
I had to get it in there.
But I mean, like the cape looked really good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I think capes are probably hard as hell to animate. But
Yeah. I thought all the Primes looked awesome when you see them. Like,
Yeah,
the
I think
Primes
they
are
looked-
really cool.
they look
right?
pretty cool.
They're the biggest and the baddest. They're
Yeah,
good.
they're the best.
They're bad,
Yeah.
right? They're cool.
They're the best.
They are. So anyway, he comes back to life, and he's basically like, "Who? What?" Because they're like, "Yeah, Sentinel came up here to blah blah," and he's like, "Sentinel?" Like,
Yeah.
obviously,
Oh, yeah, right,
he's like,
right,
"No, Sentinel is not a Prime. Sentinel's just he." So come to find out, he does the flashback, and Sentinel's just this little like messenger guy.
Yeah.
And he set up a trap for them, and so he told them like, "Hey, we're going to be able to go get the Quintessons, who in the bad guys of this movie, the Quintessons, I guess is how you say it. They're actually from the show, and their lore is that they created the Autobots and the Decepticons.
Is that right?
So that's actually lore."
Okay.
Which
Yeah,
is, it's just
and-
crazy that like, so it's not a direct copy like Scott said, but they're in the show and they created them. So like, we have not seen them since the show.
Sure.
I mean, maybe they're in the comics and stuff, but what I mean is like Michael Bay isn't talking about quintessence.
I
you
did
know
want
what
to.
I mean?
Do you have a number one by chance?
Of
Transformers?
no.
Okay. One just sold for like $200.
Yeah.
And I was like, God
Yeah.
dang.
Like
No,
the
I-
80s
I would-
comic?
yeah,
I wouldn't have bought this.
I didn't think you would have,
No.
but
No.
who knows? With that collection of yours, who knows?
Plus, at that time too, it was like those are like little kids comics.
Yeah,
those
that's
aren't-
fair.
Those aren't real comic books, right? Like
hilarious.
that's.
GI Joe was this, but if you go back and reread those GI Joe stuff,
I mean,
like, it's
I never went down the GI Joe rabbit hole, but I know there are people that just positively love those comic books and that say that they're way better than they have any right to be.
Larry Hamm,
And they also pull into the Marvel universe because they run into Frank Castle in
they
Vietnam.
do. They sure
Ah.
do.
Wait, no, I'm thinking of the Vietnam comic books. Never mind.
The Nam.
The Nam.
The Nam
is what I was thinking.
Yeah,
of.
they do. But I mean, it's the same writer, I think.
Yeah.
And Larry Hama is a combat veteran from Vietnam, so he's writing GI Joe and the Nam, and you're just like, God dang, like this is a little.
He's working through some stuff.
Yeah, it's-
Yeah, really.
he absolutely was. We have like a group where we do like somebody picks like a comic to read, and our buddy Jones picked the first 12 issues of the Nam, and I remember reading that. I was like, God dang, like I cannot believe that this was a Marvel comic
Yeah.
in the 80s. Like this is
Yeah.
intense. But
Yeah,
yes,
it's not the era of grim and gritty where everything was trying to be like that. It was like it was just totally
itself.
not like what you
no.
saw. in
And
other
then when
comic books,
Frank
yeah.
Castle shows up, you're like, oh,
Yeah.
like, we know how this is
Well,
going to go.
I know he ends up pretty effed in the head, so something really bad's about to happen.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
yeah.
All right. So anyways, his name is Tryon, is the Laurence Fishburne.
Alpha Tryon.
Alpha
Tryon.
Alpha Tryon. And so he shows the flashback and basically said Sentinel betrayed them.
Who was the top guy in the movie? Omnicron? Am I making that up? Who was
Are
the
you
other?
talking about Unicron from the movie?
Is that
Orson
who-
Welles?
That's what. Okay. Yes. Unicron. But he's the big planet.
He's Galactus. I mean, there's a
No, you're right.
there's a
No.
lot of similarities
Yes,
between
yes,
Marvel
he is very
and
much
Transformers.
Galactus. Yeah, well, because Marvel wrote the Transformers.
Right. So anyway, yeah, they took a lot of that
You're
kind
right.
of stuff. So he showed that he betrayed them. He said that they were going to get there to do whatever with the Quintessons. Come to find out, it was a trap. They all attacked them. The Primes pretty much fended them off until Sentinel came in and
Screwed 'em all
got
over.
them all when they were down and chopped their heads off. And then they ended up stealing the cog from Megatronus. He stole Megatronus's cog, and he became a big Prime. That's how Sentinel Prime became, because that's the one that D16 gets, and they're all using Megatronus's cog.
Right.
Event. Well, we see that. I mean, that's the end. But you get what I'm saying. It's like, so it's interesting that the bad guys, even though Megatronus was a good guy, but it's like they're all drawn to this for whatever reason, this cog. Anyway, so he tells them, like, yeah, this is no good. And so they see them on the surface. They see, when we cut back to Sentinel Prime, he is delivering their energon that they've been mining. All the miners are working nonstop to get this, they think, for their supply, and they're delivering it to the bad guys, the Quintessons. And this big, huge, like, spidery looking, huge robot guy comes down and basically takes Sentinel and is like, you haven't given us all the energon you promised. And come to find out, he's like, it's gone. Like, they by killing the Primes, they've screwed them over. The Matrix is gone. It's just basically disappeared. And the energon, like we said, is dried up. So like once the mining, once they're done, like they're mining for scraps. And once that's gone, there is no energon. And then none of them can survive. Right. So he's screwed them over to get power and whatever. It didn't work out. So he basically says, like, we'll get it to you. We're going to work them overtime. And he's like, yeah, tell all the miners to work round the clock, no breaks, blah, blah, blah. We see his true colors. He's really a bad guy. So, I mean, the rest of the movie from here is them trying to stop Sentinel. Alpha Trion ends up giving them all the cogs. He goes to all the other Primes. And I thought this was a really cool moment where he's like, you guys were all born with cogs, because they're like, yeah, we didn't have any. And he's like, no, all Transformers have cogs. Sentinel took them from you so that you would have to work in the mines. Like, he's a really evil dude. And so he gives them each Prime's cog, and then they become Transformers. And they get their big,
Correct.
They can
transform.
turn to vehicles. And that's funny, right? Like when Optimus is trying to transform and his head gets stuck, and he's like, where's my head? But fight ensues where, like, now the bad guys are onto them and they're all fighting, and they're trying to get back to the city with Alpha Trion gave them a little hologram of the actual events of the fight and his recordings, the archives. And he's like, go back there. And Prime thinks that he's going to be able to show the people of Iacon City that, like, Sentinel's a bad dude. Now, D16, this is the flip for him. D16 is like,
he is big mad.
I want to kill everyone.
Right.
Like, they deserve to die and be punished. And Prime's like, no, they'll believe us. Or, Pax is like, we'll show them this recording and then we'll be able to, like, get the good guys back in control. And D16's like, no, he deserves to die. And I think this is the dark stuff, right, that Scott was talking about, where it's like, this movie goes to a really dark place.
Yes.
And if you wonder, like, well, how is Megatron going to go from being his buddy to being Megatron? And it's like, well,
it happens. I mean, I'll give them credit. Like, the timing of this, like, it's not a long movie, so they are able to do it pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, again, the pacing, an hour 40-minute movie. I mean, it moves along at a good clip, and so quick though that, like, they're like, yeah, we're mad. Orion Pax is like, we're gonna clear our names and tell them what's up. He's like, I'm gonna go kill everyone, and then they get knocked out.
Right.
And you're like, well, what the hell's going on now? And here we go. They wake up and you see Starscream and you see Shockwave and you see Soundwave.
Yes.
And you see all who will become the Decepticons. I did like the little touch of where the little sticker on his...
the decal?
The little decal, right, of Megatronus. Like, he's a big fan of him, and Optimus or Pax is like, here's a sticker, and he puts it on him.
Right.
And then that comes into play later when he gets it engraved on his body.
Drilled into his body.
So they wake up, and it's like, oh, there they are. You're pointing at the screen like there's all the Decepticons. Tom wasn't, but pointing at, I was not. There's all the famous...
There's more robots. I was still trying to figure out why they have a gem.
A gem?
Yeah, there's a scene where they're, like, in a gym at the beginning exercising, and I was like,
just keeping their parts.
You're robots.
Yeah.
Well,
why are you?
You don't want to get rusty.
Why are you exercising?
I thought they had, like, a locker room.
They're like they were doing, like, pull-ups and stuff.
Oh, that's funny.
And I was like, but why?
They gotta keep those gears.
Keep the gears.
You don't want to seize up. You don't want to seize up.
I think working in the mines would keep those gears pretty going.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, it's a whole
It is
other
funny that they
planet.
had-
We don't
I
know.
didn't even think
we don't
about
know
that.
we don't know the physiology here.
Right. Right.
These are I mean, the planet is all robots.
Okay,
and
when the
advanced-
guy gets his knife hands, it's funny, but like he's also a straight up sociopath. like he's killing
Bad
people.
guys, yeah.
Like, but he's like laughing
Yeah,
about
yeah.
killing
Yeah,
these
right, right,
people.
right.
Like, because I mean, they on in this world, those are people.
Yes.
Right.
And he's like, hey, look at this. Like, I'm just like, I don't know that. Like, it looks like he's killing a robot, but I guess they're not really robots. And like, you're kind of kill crazy
Yeah,
right
right,
now.
right.
I mean, this is the same problem. I mean, if you know, you're looking at this more critically, understandably, like Fast and Furious when the little kid is shooting humans, which I think is worse. But like anytime that the good guys are taking people out, look at any Rambo, look at any movie where the good guy's killing, and it's like you're crazy, you are slaying people left and right. But I think for being a kids movie, you know, it's robots, so it's like
It's not as bad.
bad robots.
Yeah,
Look at bad
right,
robots.
right.
So you see all the who will become the Decepticons, and you see this is like the throne that Starscream is sitting
Yes.
on. When he takes out Megatron in the movie, he's sitting on a throne,
Yep.
and the throne is even shaped the same way, like when he's King Starscream
Yeah.
from
Correct.
the movie. Thought that was a great homage. That again, it doesn't knock you over the head. It looks like a throne, but we all know from the movie that's what that is. And Starscream is their leader. These are actually like the special forces of Iacon City, the High Guard. That once things went down with Sentinel, they left to split off.
Yes.
And they've been, I guess, trying to figure out a way to reclaim the city, but they're on the outskirts. And obviously, Sentinel has the protection of these insane bad guys, like watching over them. So, you know, if they go step out of place, they get blown up by the ship. So,
Right.
So they're biding their time and trying to figure it out. And so at this point, Ryan Pack's like, you got to help us. And D16 is like, yeah, we're going to go murdering and you guys can join me. And then everyone starts following him because he's like, I mean, obviously, like very compelling. He actually puts King Starscream in his place,
Right.
and like crushes his throat, which ends up to that little Easter egg where he sounds a little bit more.
Well,
but
and that's him taking the role of the leader of this
Yeah.
band of Decepticons.
but he basically says like, you know, you want to follow this guy, or you want to come with me and get the city back.
right.
What I liked about this too, because you keep bringing up how Michael Bay has done this or what have you.
Yeah.
Starscream, I think, as far as a character goes, and the original thing, the original cartoon and stuff like that, I think was such a unique character because you know back then any of these good guy bad guy cartoons, they were good guy and bad guy. The bad guys had a leader and everybody followed him, but in the Transformers, you know, Starscream wanted to be the leader, and he was constantly trying to undermine him. And you know, he was really good at his job, and he was all about the evil, the Decepticon cause, but he wanted to be in charge. And you know, but you know, he couldn't whoop Megatron.
Yeah.
And so I was really pleased because I think Michael Bay kind of skipped over Starscream
Oh,
a
they
little
totally
bit.
Yeah, they-
wasted
I think a lot of
Starscream.
Big time.
right. I think that you know it's a really potentially dynamic character, and here you have him. You had Steve Buscemi as Starscream, which I think was an interesting choice. I think it was well done.
Yeah. It was good.
And you know, and you see, you know, he was true to character when the fighting starts breaking out. Starscream, being kind of a self-preservationist, an opportunity, kind of slinks out the side door for a minute, like yeah. But you know, him and Megatron get into the fight, and you know, Megatron gets the better of him. And you know, if they do sequels to this, which I guess they would still be prequels. I don't know what you actually
Yeah,
call
sequels
that.
to this,
Sequel
yeah.
prequels, but I think that they've set up beautifully the opportunity to actually have that Megatron Starscream dynamic
Definitely.
that has been missing from everything since 1986, really.
Yeah.
You know, because I think that that's just a potentially fun subplot that you can do a lot with. And I was really, really happy that they did Starscream justice in this one.
Yeah, that Starscream was always one of the best parts of the cartoon. He was one of the best villains because, I mean, Megatron was so bad, and then Starscream would always try to screw him over and take the throne, but then Starscream would always get foiled by Megatron, and it was a fun dynamic, like you said. So I agree. I was happy to see that. So anyway, they take them to Iacon City, and long story short, a big fight goes down. And in the process, Megatron is getting more evil and more evil. They actually get Sentinel dead to rights, basically. And again, Prime is like, no, we're not going to kill him. We're going to, whatever, I don't know, whatever they do to bad guys in this world. I don't know if they have jail or decommission them or whatever, but he's like, don't blow his head off.
Right.
Because Megatron's found his cannon.
Yeah, he found the
at this
cannon.
point.
Yeah.
When he gets really angry at one point in the movie, that cannon generates,
Right.
which of course is one of his big weapons.
He turns into a gun.
He turns into a tank, which we see in this. Also, he can turn into a gun, which has always been a weird physical transformation of a huge robot turning into a little hand cannon that is very powerful.
Yeah, it's a cannon.
But in this one, it's cool. They do the tank, and then he's got the big cannon on his hand. But anyway, it comes down to it, and I mean, big action scene. I don't want to downplay it, but just to get there. But like, huge fight scene goes down in the city between all the forces. But they get Sentinel dead to rights. Prime says, "Don't kill him." D16's like, "Yes, he's going to be taken out for what he does." And he also tortured him before this point.
Yes.
Like, they captured half of the will-be Decepticons and D16, and they're basically like, yeah, no one's going to believe you because we are going to publicly execute you as traitors.
Right.
And D16 stands up to him. He says, "I will not kneel to you." And he says, "Oh, I see you have Megatronuses." He was a great
You
lead,
like that?
whatever.
You
Yeah.
like that?
And he puts a sticker on his chest, and he laser engraves over it.
Right.
Which I thought it was a little weird that he felt it. I'm not really sure how that.
Oh, that's true.
I mean, that's always the thing with robots. They feel pain, but you know what I mean? But he's like in agony. I'm like, I don't really know how that works. But anyway, he etches the Decepticon, the Megatronus logo, into his chest, which will come back later, obviously. So anyway, he's very, very mad at Sentinel at this point, and he goes to blow his head off with his cannon, and who jumps in front but Orion Pax?
Right.
And so he sacrifices himself. D16 tries to save him, and then all of a sudden his eyes glow red.
Yes.
And that's the Megatron thing. We have not seen the red eyes until now.
If you notice, though, in the movie, and I was starting to notice this, or think I was starting to notice this, as the movie goes on, D16's eyes start changing just little by little.
Do they? Okay.
They're bright yellow early on, and then every time he gets a little more upset, they change. And I'm sitting there thinking, am I seeing that right? Or what have
interesting.
You? And then when, of course, that part, when they finally glow completely red, because in the original cartoon, almost all the Autobots had blue eyes and almost all the Decepticons had red eyes.
Yeah.
So, and, there's an episode where the Autobots got turned evil and their eyes turned red. So, again, it's kind of established blue is good, red is bad, or at least it shows kind of what your temperament is, I guess. Yeah. And so, at that point, his eyes turn red, and it's like, okay, now I'm going to have to go back and look at that, because I swear they were gradually changing the shade of his eyes as the movie went on. When he finally turned all the way, now he's got the piercing red eyes. Now he's big bad,
That's a good catch. I didn't notice that. Something did seem weird, but I didn't notice it was the eyes.
Right.
I do like how once he becomes a Transformer, when he does get the cog, that he gets like the helmet more like Megatron.
It starts to encase his face a little bit.
Yeah, because at first it's like he obviously is Megatron, but he doesn't look
we
it.
should say that the John Hamm Transformer
Sentinel.
has Megatron's Matrix.
Oh, no, it generates.
He's got his cog.
Oh, his cog.
Yeah, Megatronius is cog.
He's got Megatronius cog.
Yeah, he's got right. I'm sorry,
So
because I'm like the Matrix.
that's coming
leadership's
back.
different. Yeah. He's got his cog, and that's what I'm saying. Eventually, he's gonna rip that out and take his favorite Transformer, his cog. But anyway, so he's holding Orion Pax, and then he's like, "No, I'm done saving you," and drops him down the pit, like to the core of the city.
Yeah.
And I thought this was a really cool visual scene. This is maybe one of the most abstract, cool, visual looking things, but he's going through the core of Cybertron essentially and falling, and he ends up getting like absorbed by the energy, and it's like the spirit energy, whatever, the of all the leaders of all the primes, and the Laurence Fishburne Alpha Trion ends up saying like, "Your noble sacrifice has proven to us that you are the leader," and so they regenerate. The matrix of leadership that's disappeared has now been regenerated.
Yep.
And they give it to Orion Pax, who becomes
Optimus
Prime, and he's huge. Like, he's turned into the huge Optimus Prime that we know. I like the way that these robots evolve, the way that like Orion Pax, to him getting a cog, looks a little bit more like Prime, but he's still not a Prime yet. And then when he gets to be Optimus Prime, it's the model that we know, right? It looks really good. So he basically comes back. He does the thing that Optimus Prime and Megatron always do, is they fight,
it's inevitable.
He gets his axe. He gets his power
not
axe.
the sword.
Yeah, exactly. He gets the Energon axe, which is what it should be, and he ends up taking him out. He slices his cannon in half, has a really good big knockdown. But
I believe that's called circumcision.
He circumcised him. But this is the key, right? This is why he's a prime and why D16 is not a prime. He shows mercy. He shows compassion. It's what got him killed in the movie.
Right.
It's literally against Megatron because Megatron does not care. He just wants to rule. And so Prime does not kill Megatron. He banishes him. He says, you are gone forever. Take your crew and,
Go.
and get out of here, right? And so obviously D16 not very happy about it, but he turns into a tank, gets all his jets, and they scoot out of there.
Take off, yeah.
And that's pretty much how it ends. I
Yeah,
mean, it sets it up for...
You get there's a post-credit sequence where Bumblebee goes down to, he sees his people. Goes back and talks to his friends.
Robots,
But the big one is that we see the Decepticons, like the birth of the Decepticons, and they give the symbol.
They get all their
and
logos. Everyone gets branded as a Decepticon, and now it's official. And earlier, like at the very end of the movie, he even says, like, I'm no longer D16, I'm Megatron.
Megatron.
Right. And,
And
so
that's...
Yep. So now
And it was
game on.
I thought I was impressed. Again, about 30 minutes in, I was like, I don't think this is gonna work. And then they once I realized, like, okay, we're going back to the roots of the original stuff.
Yeah.
Then I was like, okay, like now I can. And once I figured it out, I was like, all right, I liked it. I thought it was pretty well done. It looked great.
Yeah,
Like, the voice acting was good.
I think it's hard at first to get a grasp on what movie is this because the trailers look so kiddie.
Yeah.
The jokes in the beginning were so kiddie. But once you got into the movie and saw how much respect they were handling this series with, because it is a beloved series, I mean, obviously Tom didn't grow up with it, but for 40 years, people have grown up with Transformers. And the Michael Bay stuff, again, I mean, they're taking the names, they're taking big robots, and other than that, they don't really care about the stuff. They're changing names of stuff. They just, racist robots and parents.
Right.
All the stupid stuff he does in those movies, which make them, I mean, the first one's fun. The third one is a lot of fun. The second, fourth, and fifth are just ridiculous in
so
those live
bad.
actions.
But yeah,
Bumblebee's separate.
Beast Wars wasn't bad, right?
No, the Rise of the Beast,
yeah.
that's different too, though. Like, once they got on that trajectory, so Bumblebee was Travis Knight, who's the head of Laika. He directed that. And then I can't remember who Rise of the Beast was directed by, because I don't think
It was
Travis...
somebody.
Well, clearly.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you for your encyclopedic
But
knowledge.
I mean, right. Sorry.
No. We're just kidding with you. So anyway, but they're on a good trajectory now. But we're talking, and Michael Bay's always going to get a producer credit. But
of course,
they're becoming less Michael Bay vehicles.
They're getting further and further away from that.
And think about it. With Rise of the Beast, you bring in the Optimus Primal and all the beasts and everything. And like that's people that are our age. They watched G1, and then a lot of people went to Beast Wars and grew up with those ones. And now there's a lot of new shows, right? There's Netflix shows that I didn't watch, so I didn't catch a lot of that. But I was reading some stuff from the Netflix shows. I believe the composer of this film is the composer of the Netflix series, and so he kind of does his own thing. But I've heard that it was like some were like little homages to that series. But yeah, I thought this was a blast. I hope they keep doing it. The only thing that just is going to take a little getting used to is the voices.
That's true.
I went with Ryan and my buddy Chris, and I said, leaving the movie, I go, this is like Kevin Conroy as Batman. It's just hard. Like Peter Cullen is Optimus Prime. Frank Welker is Megatron. Kevin Conroy is Batman.
Yeah.
Obviously, things happen. There's no way to get Kevin Conroy back. Eventually, the other guys, they just can't do it, right? They've got to pass the torch eventually, but it's just going to take some time.
Yeah, it's Jensen Ackles now.
Yeah. Well, and they had to at this time because, again, much love to Peter and Frank, but if you do hear them reprise their voices in video games and stuff like that in more recent years, their voices have aged. Right. And here they're playing younger versions of those characters. I don't see a way that they could have done those voices.
That's a great point.
Without it sounding older.
Yeah, right.
Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
When they de-age Indiana Jones in that newest movie, Dial of Destiny, and the CG is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like him. But he's got old man voice.
He doesn't sound the same because he can't sound the same.
The Irishman.
Yeah, it's the Irishman. It's the same thing. You just can't, no matter what they do, even if they try to modulate it down a little bit, or up a little bit, and it just doesn't sound the same.
Right.
It's Chris Pratt and Mario, right?
And Garfield.
Yeah, right. It's like
probably a lot more to come. Yeah,
right. But that's the point. Is like we're not going to get back to the originals, and eventually it won't be an option. And so I see why they do it. So it's just something that as fans we're going to have to get over.
Right.
I would implore people at least give it a chance, right? Because I mean, just to not watch it because it's like, oh, that's not the voice. It's like, come on, casting
it's hard.
changes.
It's hard to when again 40 years. of the same guys doing the same stuff.
It's hard.
It's hard.
But
yeah.
you know, you got to give it a chance. I think Hemsworth does a good job.
He does.
Brian Tyree Henry.
From your favorite Marvel movie of
I
all
know,
time.
from Eternals. He was really good in Fall Guy. He was the FX stunt guy in the Fall Guy.
He's
Atlanta.
in Spider-Verse.
He's Spider-Verse.
He's Paperboy.
He is Paperboy.
Yep.
Every time I say him, I'm Paperboy.
I know, right? Brian Tyree Henry is a great actor.
Yeah.
He's a really good voice actor in this.
Isn't he in the Godzilla stuff?
He was
He's
the funny.
He's the
He is.
podcast guy, right?
He's the pod.
Yeah.
He's great. We love him. We've talked big about him and everything. We've seen him on here. I think Scarlett was good. Key was good. Buscemi, Fishburne, Hamm. I think this voice cast, yes, they are names, but they were not phoning it in like we all said.
No, yeah.
So if you like Transformers, give it a shot, even if there's some changes. But if you don't, I mean, I know, Tom, Transformers isn't your thing, but I think this is a fun entry point. If you had never seen
This is a
Transformers
really
thing,
good entry point for Transformers.
there's not a lot of baggage where you're going to go, well, what? I mean, it's an origin.
Yeah,
Right?
right.
We didn't even know this stuff.
No.
Well, and I think it works for that because it's interesting. You know, Hasbro, obviously, they've got all these properties and they want to continue to do media based on these properties. And yet somehow they haven't, for example, really got G.I. Joe right yet, which is wild
that's true.
to me. You know, and I don't know how a Monopoly movie is going to work. I'm hoping there's not going to be a crossover between that and this. You know, but who knows? But the thing is that, you know, Transformers, you know, I like in the back of my truck, I have a Decepticon symbol. I don't know what that says about me, but you know, there it is. And it wasn't that long ago. My wife she's got a little side business. She does a little soap business. I was helping her out at one of her craft fairs, and a little kid came up because he saw the Decepticon symbol on the back of the truck. And he's probably about the same age I was when I watched the original show and played with the original toys. And he talked about it with such enthusiasm and love that it's clear to me that, you know, he could be like me, pushing 50 down the road and still, you know, is fond of this stuff, still loves this stuff and is going to support this stuff. So I think this movie could serve as a really good, I guess you could say, you know, re-beginning, not really a reboot because it's so loyal to pre-existing stuff.
Yeah.
But and pays such a great homage to the pre-existing stuff. It doesn't try to reinvent the wheel. If anything, it kind of restores the wheel.
Yes.
But you know, it's clear to me that, you know, Transformers could be going on for another 40 years very easily. And I think this movie may be able to set that in motion, you know, fully without, you know, being kind of weird like some of the Bay stuff was.
Yeah.
Or relying on stuff from 40 years ago.
Right.
Like this could be a great entry point that it's just like, you know, your first SNL cast, your first Bond, like to people, different people at different ages, like they come in at this entry point
100%.
and they love it. And they don't necessarily like the old stuff, or if they watch like, oh, that's old stuff, I don't really care, and everything forward they love. This movie, you could start at it, have no love for the old stuff, even think the old stuff's old, I'm not going to mess with it. And I think you could be a lifelong Transformers fan.
Yeah.
And we'll see where it goes too.
I guess. And how much is it made? Do we know? Like where it's at financially?
I haven't checked the projections.
Wikipedia said like $11 million. I don't know if that was just like, I can't imagine that's previews.
No.
But
Well,
they
did open it. There were some Thursday screenings, you know, not in wide release. Didn't go into wide release till Friday, but I know some places were starting to show it on Thursday evening.
25 to 35 million was the forecast. So I mean, I know that's kind of a big range, but 25 million on the low
That's
range.
still pretty solid.
Yeah, and that's domestic, right? I mean, this
Yeah.
is
Oh, yeah.
Transformers
Good
is
Lord.
a universal.
Well, and if it's even a moderate hit, you see the spike in toy sales,
Right.
which is the whole
Their whole
Whole point.
Right.
It's always
So-
been the point.
Yeah. So, well, anyway, I guess that's it for this one. Let's go around the table and everyone can say where to find them.
This is Joe. You can follow me on the Twitter at JoeyButts, BUTTS21, also on Letterboxd at the same.
This is Kevin. Follow me on Twitter at Kevin R. Brackett.
And Scott, where can they find you?
You can find me at my websites, either patrickscottpatterson.com or hyperspacearcade.com. I revived an old business model of mine and starting to do pretty well at it. And you can follow a lot of my social links for Facebook and X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, YouTube, stuff like that. It's all connected to those. And you can also just Google it. It'll come right up.
Or ask Meta AI, right? They're always right.
Yeah, yeah, something like that. Some days.
And you can find me on Twitter at Roger Kubert or on Facebook at facebook.com/Tom O'Keefe. You can find the show online at facebook.com/Real Spoilers. While you're there, like the page, join the group, and of course, don't forget our Patreon at patreon.com/Real Spoilers. So that's it for this one. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, Valcom and Aquacom build a sister for Phil.
Get ready for a spoiler. Won't say it twice, cause we already